Welcome to Game Talk Radio. Your hosts, Greg and Jen, bringing you their take on this week's hottest gaming news.
Welcome back to Game Talk Radio. This is episode 19.
19.
I'm Greg.
I'm Jen.
And today's theme is going to be, Jen, I have a massive headache. So...
That only goes with one in the story.
Well, yeah, I know. Well, so we've got like one really big congested garbage story to talk about, and then we have a really good feel-good story. So we're going to end on the feel-good story.
Yeah.
Because we don't want you guys having to go through your workday all bummed out and ending it like you just got done watching Logan in the theater and you just kind of, oh, man. Yeah. So anyway, so we want to jump right into the big news that everyone's been talking about all week is Mass Effect. So there's a new Mass Effect game coming out. It's been however many years since the last one. If everybody remembers, there was a lot of controversy surrounding the ending of the last game. You probably don't. Because
I don't. I've never played Mass Effect, so I'm coming in blind.
Well, I'll give you a quick rundown. So there was a really weird ending to the third game.
Okay.
Where you essentially... I'm not too worried about spoilers, but I'm also going to keep it spoiler light.
Can I guess?
Sure.
Do I get cryogenically frozen?
No,
Damn.
but you get to choose between three things. Essentially,
Okay.
like you make a decision at the end of the game, and all three of the endings are essentially the same with like a
Aw.
little tweak, and it just felt kind of like crapped out, you know?
Like we ran out of ideas.
Right. Like now apparently that spawned from a lot of things, mostly that there was apparently a completely different ending to the game that got spoiled almost a year earlier.
Oh.
Like someone leaked the ending. It was some sort of dark matter.
Rude.
Yeah, something was happening. So apparently, it was Casey Hudson was the the lead, like the director of the game, and he basically kind of got really paranoid after that. And he's like, "Well, we have to change it because we
Uh-huh.
can't have our ending already known."
Right.
And then he apparently would lock himself in his office with only his assistant to write parts of the game. So apparently they had a committee, and if you had an idea for the Mass Effect universe, you'd bring it to this committee, this round table, and then the round table would say, okay, well, that doesn't work because of this.
Okay.
This doesn't work because of that, but this could work that way because of that. And people would go, okay, that's how this everything fits into a cohesive universe. And apparently he would go into his office and not share anything with other people because he didn't want it leaked again. And so he got really paranoid, and him and his assistant would go, and they would write things, and then he would keep it under lock and key. Really weird stuff.
But here's the question, though. Did they find out who leaked it?
They never found out anything like that.
Hmm.
So all these years later, but I will say Mass Effect is one of my favorite game series of all time. And the third game, the entire third game, is a great ending to the trilogy. You can't just look at the last 15 minutes of the game. If you look at the last 15 minutes of the game, you will be disappointed in the last 15 minutes.
Just to answer your original question, Mass Effect 3 came out March 6, 2012.
2012.
So
okay,
5 years
so
ago.
5 years ago. So there was a lot of controversy surrounding that game.
Right.
So we've moved on. We're starting a new trilogy probably with this game.
And in the meantime, BioWare was purchased by EA, is that correct? Or did that already happen?
That happened actually. That would have happened actually after the first Mass Effect, I think.
Oh.
Because EA's been publishing the Mass Effect games for quite some time. But the way EA kind of works, 'cause I know where you're going with this.
Yes.
So the way EA kind of works is they'll buy a studio, and then they let them be until they don't. So they leave them alone. They have moderate success, and then they start. Oh well, let's move this studio here. Let's rename this studio this. Let's move these people here, and then you have a shell of your former self as far as a studio goes. It's happened numerous times in the 90s and 2000s with companies that EA has absorbed. Smaller studios that they bought because they had really great games, and then they just basically wore them out. You know, they had to make games until, and then if they ever had a game that wasn't good, they quickly blamed the studio, shut them down, and dispersed the people somewhere else. So Mass Effect Andromeda is coming out Tuesday, I believe.
And
It
they've
comes out this Tuesday.
already kind of released like a preview where you can play some of the storyline, some of the game.
Yeah, this weekend was part of, there's something called EA Access, which is like a monthly subscription fee you pay to get free EA games.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did as part of that service was they also offered the first 10 hours playable in Mass Effect.
That's
So
a
that-
lot
that's
of
neat.
gameplay.
That's actually really neat, too, because if you're a member of the subscription, you got to play the game before everybody else. That's pretty cool.
But here's the thing, though. 10 hours. I mean, how much much gameplay are we talking about actually? Like, what percentage of the game is actually playable?
Mass Effect is a 50 to 100-hour RPG. Probably.
Okay, so it's not like 10 hours is really gonna spoil anything.
No.
Well, I mean, there could be spoilers because some big thing could happen at like the very
Sure.
beginning.
Well, we already kind of had one little minor thing spoiled because
well,
we were
it
looking
didn't
up the
spoil
videos.
it for me, but
It spoiled it for me, but I don't really care because I'm not overly excited for this game anyway. So Mass Effect Andromeda is coming out, and apparently when the early review copy started going out and the Twitch stream ban was lifted so that, you know, the reviewers could stream it on Twitch as like an early preview sort of thing, all these videos and articles started coming about how janky the animations were.
yes.
So they just started like just basically all the articles you saw were these animations are awful, they're laughable, they're horrible, they look like robots, they look like animatronics. And
One of the videos we watched on YouTube actually set a compilation of facial expressions and movement to Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass.
It was probably one of the best videos I've ever seen. Okay, so let's get to the meat and potatoes of this thing. So that's what's causing a lot of the other things we're going to talk about with this story. But we watched the video. There are some bad animations. There are some bad animations. There's no getting around it. Like the compilation video that we saw, it wasn't like glitchy stuff either. No. Like where like their face was molded into their like the back of their face.
Sunken in.
It was just straight up like a Chuck E. Cheese animatronic mouse trying to play the banjo in a group of, I don't know, how do you even describe what that is?
To me, it seems when you look at, obviously there's this whole idea of the uncanny valley. When something is too realistic, it causes a problem with your brain not being able to understand what it's seeing because you have trouble. Like that Final Fantasy movie had that kind of problem because there's almost like a dead look in their eyes.
Yeah, it makes you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you know it's not real and it's like trying to be real. It's weird. So yeah, like you said, it's a term called the uncanny valley where we're trying to get over that hump where one day we'll just see things and not know that they're fake and trying to be realistic, which is why I think we're seeing a resurgence kind of in like video games going back to a more retro look.
Right.
Because people are getting off-put by this realistic kind of look.
But with this Mass Effect Andromeda, you don't have that. You've got some sort of realism to it. But then you've got characters whose mouth movements and their eyebrows don't match. There's a scene that we saw. We have absolutely no context to what the scene is actually about. But the woman says, "Forgive me for looking so tired because blah, 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 blah. I've been up all night worrying about whatever this thing is." And she looks like she has Botox. Like there's no movement. There's no emotion or anything registering on her face except for some eyebrow movements and lip movements with the lip syncing, which isn't very good anyway.
Yeah, and there was some weird stuff. Then on the opposite side of that, there were ones that were over animated, like their eyes move kind of like they get all big and bulgy, and they kind of look around, and the eyebrows kind of flicker, and the smiles like half like hey, you know, like kind of derpy, you know.
And it's not great. It's not like other video games. I mean, Witcher is a good example of very good facial animation and facial expressions without being overly realistic. You still know that you're watching it, but the realism is very high because of the way that they've modeled their characters. But this is like, oh,
well, and remember when you watched me play a little bit of Horizon?
Yes.
Like Aloy, the main character in that, like you made a joke that it looked like she had like a mush mouth. Like she was talking like she had her cheeks were kind of puffed out. Like facial animation kind of sucks. Like it still does. Like they can't match it up perfectly. Not when you're trying to mass produce a game with that many different characters and stuff. Like it doesn't work. Like yeah, a movie with a $300 million budget can sync up. Like the Warcraft movie had amazing facial animations, but it was a movie that had facial animations. Everybody there was working on the movie. Like this is a game that's got programmers and design, and you can't pay everyone to be an animator, you know.
And that kind of leads into this story that I wouldn't say it kind of broke. What happened is that there's this. I'm assuming it's a guy just from the way that it's written, and I'm pretty sure, but it's called the Ralph Retort, and the title of this article is A cosplayer with no video game experience was the lead facial animator for Mass Effect Andromeda. Going back to what you said, when you're talking about video game design, there's usually a handful of people working in the facial animation section, and there's some people working with dialogue and some people working with combat or whatever. So, but there's hundreds of people working on a game at any given time. Not all of them are working on the facial animation,
Right.
is where I think you were going. Unlike a movie like the Warcraft movie, where there was a huge team and that was their thing because the movie was mostly CG.
There were probably 5 people for each character, you know, that were just in charge of all the scenes of that character and stuff like that. And so, like, before we get too much into it, I just want to say, like, first of all, the point I want to make first is the animations that we saw in that video, they're pretty bad. But they're not game-breaking, and they're not awful. Like, it's disappointing to me because I do think that they're worse than the previous Mass Effect games, and I think they're some of the worst. And again, we've only seen a compilation video of all the worst ones, though. I need to play the game for sure to know. But, I mean, I would say what I saw was kind of funny. But it was... I mean, it wasn't so bad that it was, like, a broken game. Like, yeah, there's always weird stuff in these games. If you ever watch... There's a YouTube video series that we used to watch called Gamer Poop. And
Nice.
and the guy basically uses mods and different things to and voice cutting to make, like, characters from Skyrim and Fallout and Mass Effect say different things, and he gets them to do some pretty wide-eyed weird animations too. And it's really funny, and it's cool. So this was definitely funny and weird, but it's not so broken that it's, like, unbelievable. Like I'm disappointed that their quality had sunk, but if you look at the Mass Effect 3 and the ending of Mass Effect 3, their quality was kind of sinking as a company anyway. BioWare as a company is not really BioWare anymore. They're EA. And
Right.
EA is just shuffling talent around wherever they want. And it's not like the heart and soul that made the original BioWare so awesome isn't really there anymore. And that's okay. That's kind of what happens in the industry. But we have to stop holding them to some unrealistic standard that, like, we shouldn't expect this game to be better than their last one because it's not really them anymore. So you got a bunch of talented people. So anyway, though, the issue we do have, because there's always going to be people that take it too far. And so now there's people who are mad about the game. And people on the internet in general lately, I've just been finding, are just really quick to jump on things. Like, I had to stick up for the Switch all those times and Zelda and all these other things. People like just to hate stuff and make fun of it just to do it. Okay, no problem, I guess, if that's what makes you happy. But I felt like this was another case of that. But as always, people took it too far. So as you were getting to, there's a report where I don't know what you could even call this. It's not a news site, obviously. It's not news.
No, but apparently, I mean, even before this article came out, it looks like PewDiePie has a video that talks about all the mistakes he saw in his time playing it. But then, as you said, this guy took it a step further, this Ethan Ralph character, by essentially putting all of the blame for all of the problems when it comes to facial animations on one person.
Right, so I guess you'd call that a witch hunt, but I don't think that's even the proper term. I don't even know what to say. Basically, they're looking for someone to blame for why the game's bad. They found someone who at one point on Twitter had listed that she was the lead facial animator for Mass Effect.
Right.
And she was a cosplayer and a
makeup artist
and some other stuff. And so then they basically dug into her background and started blaming her for the game being awful. And as we've known sometimes with the internet, unfortunately, people will go out of their way to say ridiculous things. And so some of these claims are saying things like, the game sucks because she was a lead animator with no experience who was just a cosplayer, which isn't true. You know, just basically trying to make up a story that could get I mean, it's clickbait. I honestly believe that. Like, this era of, it's not about being right, it's about being first. Get something out there that people want to click on and read is more important than actually being factually correct about what you're saying.
Well, and what they're kind of alluding to is the fact that, I mean, her name is Allie. And I mean, you can find her pretty much, you Google her name and you could find her, but she at one point was or is still a model. And for some reason, people on the internet tend to attribute beautiful people with being dumb, which is an unfair assumption.
Obviously, yeah.
She went to school at the Art Institute of Vancouver.
I know a lot of really ugly dumb people.
Exactly. I think there's just as many ugly, dumb people as there are beautiful, dumb people. But the thing is that, you know, they see her, okay, she's got a modeling profile on Model Mayhem. You know, she has her Twitter profile has her cosplaying, and her LinkedIn profile says that she's a facial animator at EA. Now, yes, on Twitter, at one point, it has since been changed. It doesn't say lead facial animation or animator for Mass Effect. I don't know why I can't say animator. I just keep wanting to say animation. That has since been changed, but probably because of what's been happening. And just like the internet does, they take it one step too far. Because when this article came out, because PewDiePie, as far as I know, didn't blame a person or anything. He was speaking very high level, unless I didn't watch enough of the video to see that he points out a specific person. But
so apparently she got a bunch of nasty messages on Twitter and stuff like that, which it's sad to say, but that's par for the course nowadays. Like if you mess up something, or if you're a part of something that people don't like, they'll find you and they will try to harass you. I mean,
and
that just seems to be...
Okay, yeah, you tell somebody, hey, the animation that you did on this game really sucks.
Really sucked. I wouldn't call that animation. I'd call that very poor, non-constructive criticism.
Right.
But I wouldn't call that harassment. That's not what people were doing, but that's not what I would call.
No, but the thing is, and again, because she's an attractive woman, people are sexualizing this whole thing and alluding to the fact that, you know, she only got her job because of her...
Keep it PG now.
Because of maybe some favors she did for people.
Yeah, it just insinuating that, you know, yeah. I mean, you guys can put the
yeah,
dots
you
together.
you're smart people. I'm sure that you kind of know where we're going. And then also, you know, some of those messages that were sent to her were very sexualizing and very just demonizing. I mean, they're horrible. Like, just the 4 that they put onto this article are just horrific.
I look at the first 2 here, though. Like, okay, so the first one says, why did you remove the Mass Effect Andromeda info from your Twitter? Ashamed of what you did? You should be.
Okay,
I don't like that. That to me, like, it's rude. I'm not gonna say it's not rude.
I say it's fine because it's not like wishing harm upon her.
You know, and then the next one is like, you ruined Mass Effect. Hope you get fired ASAP. Well, again, you should never wish someone to get fired, but you know what? That person's not happy. Okay, fine. But then later is when Jen was talking about some more of like the more vulgar comments, more inappropriate comments get. And you just look at this and you're like, I mean, who, like, you just wish you could, like, you know, I don't know who these people are, obviously, but you wish you could, like, turn that and show that to, like, their parents.
There was a girl who did that. She sent those, like, comments to her.
Like some, like, Facebook message or something?
Yeah, it was a Facebook message, and she said, oh, is so-and-so your son? Because this is the message you just sent me.
Well, and that, you know, and so it makes me sad when people do this because of the, you know, being anonymous on the internet, and they feel like they're invincible because no one can stop them from saying what they want to say, and it's really disappointing that they don't feel like their words have consequences. But yeah, so it's disappointing to me that, you know, because there are real problems with this game right now, like those animations are a problem, and they need to work on it. But now you've almost overtaken those problems by making a bigger problem that was way worse than the first problem. The first problem is just a game. They can patch that stuff. They can fix it.
Right.
You know, and I'll tell you what, I think when I play the game, it won't be that bad. I think when you see it, you'll see 1 or 2 things here and there, but it won't be like every person you talk to has a messed up smile or is like walking like they just crap their pants, you know, to Benny Hill music, you know, like I don't think we're going to see that, because there was seriously like a dump pants waddle. There
was the knees out kind of crab walking.
Oh man, yeah, I gotta get
I gotta get the change in my underpants.
Excuse me, not that I would know what that's like,
but you could imagine.
It's what I could imagine.
It's what I could imagine.
I know you've lived through it though.
Well, I was at one point a baby and did have a soggy bottom.
That's true.
So, but what I appreciate is what BioWare came back with after they figured out, or somebody told them, or they read this article on Kotaku and said, we should probably do something about this. But Aaron Flynn, the general manager of BioWare, did come out with a statement this afternoon, which was
Yeah, so
yesterday.
this was nice to see.
Yesterday
This was nice to
afternoon.
see that the GM of BioWare, Aaron Flynn, came out and had to make. Well, it said he had to make a statement, but he came out and made a statement. So, go
Right.
ahead.
So he said, recently a former EA employee was misidentified as a lead member of the Mass Effect Andromeda development team. These reports are false. We respect the opinions of all our players and community and welcome feedback on our games, but attacking individuals, regardless of their involvement in the project, is never acceptable. Now, I agree with that second
Yep.
piece with attacking individuals, regardless of their involvement. Kudos to this person for saying that. But what it did do, what this statement also did, was raise a couple questions. Because it says a former EA employee. Now, according to everything she has on social media, she's still employed there. So I don't know if something happened.
It's possible she got let go at the end of Mass Effect's development cycle, though, too.
Maybe.
I mean, it's a lot of that stuff, like a lot of animators and 3D modelists will be out late life in the project like that as they're starting to, cut out extra work into stuff. I mean, it's not always, but it's possible. But again, it also was weird that she put lead animator. If I had to make a guess, I'd say she probably put that to feel better about herself.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm maybe she thought like, hey, I'm the only facial animator in this building, so I'm the lead facial animator at BioWare Vancouver or something. But she might have been working with a team of 20 people. Maybe she was the lead in her cubicle. I don't know.
Or she had, like, I think you had said before we started recording, maybe she had the most seniority.
Yeah.
But I mean, she can't be more than 25. So that would be very surprising to me. But the fact of the matter is that it doesn't matter what she put on her Twitter profile or her LinkedIn profile. Obviously, if she was trying to apply for a job, I would hope that a company would do their due diligence and realize, oh, she wasn't actually the lead facial animator.
Right.
But it's not an excuse for somebody to send her a message on any one of those platforms and talk about that the only reason she got her job was because she was a woman, or that she did these sort of favors for people in management, or that, some of this other trash that people are sending her.
The insinuation that she wasn't qualified to be in the job, I think, is unfair.
Yes.
Because when you work in a creative field like that, I'm sorry, especially a big company like EA, when you work in a creative industry, you're going to get hired on the merit of your work.
Exactly.
And so there was actually a link we found, I think it was actually on the website that was trashing her.
Mm-hmm.
They had put a link to her, like,
it's her demo
demo reel. So she made an animation reel when she was in college. And I think the first video says it's okay. So the first video is called, like, I Hate Men.
And I think it's a snippet from an old movie.
Yeah, well, I think so too. But it's funny because it's her animating like this woman, and she's going through like a monologue, and the monologue at the end is something like she's all like dressed up like she's going out, and she's checking her makeup, and then she's like, I hate men. She says like that. So that was the title of that animation. The title of the next animation was like going out for fruit or something like that.
Yeah, met before.
So we looked at this demo reel, and so the claim that she's just a cosplayer with no experience is absolutely false.
No.
Her animation's actually pretty good.
It reminds me of Ratatouille.
Yeah, she had some really decent, like, she could, I mean, it's not great, but, I mean, I've seen...
There's more, like, what I watched when I looked at this demo reel was the facial expression. Because that's what she probably spent the most time on. And the facial expressions, like, I got it, and, we're watching it without sound, and you can see facial expressions. It's nothing like how Mass Effect looks. So that leads me to believe that she may not have had as much control as she was alluding to, and it wasn't her designs.
Well, and I look at stuff like this, and her characters, I assume she drew these characters as well. If she modeled these characters, then... they're very over animated. Like, they look like a Pixar movie character.
Mm-hmm.
They look like they're from, like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs or something. It's kind of
like that sort of.
So it looks like that. They're not meant to be realistic. So it is possible maybe her style didn't translate well to realistic.
That's a really good point.
But again, you don't have one person doing all the animations, and you have supervisors, and you have people in charge that were overlooking that game. So clearly, that wasn't a priority on that game. They had to get that game shipped out this spring because it was supposed to be out last year and it got delayed. So clearly, it wouldn't surprise me. EA's a big company. They were probably pushing this thing, saying, "Look, it's got to come out. No more delays. It's got to come out." And when you start getting to the end of your deadline, you're pushing, and you start looking at what you can sacrifice and what you have to change and what can wait for a patch later. Facial animations aren't game breaking.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me if that got backburnered until a later patch. Even though unfortunately it's causing a bunch of headaches to them now, it is very realistic to think that way.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just a really crappy situation all around, just because, you know, it's difficult. From what I've read, I don't have personal experience in the video game industry. I know that I am a minority when it comes to just video games in general, especially my type of video gaming, where I'm not gonna show somebody my boobs on Twitch to get them to watch my channel. I'm not that type of video gamer. I actually enjoy video games for the story and for the gameplay and everything like that. I don't need the attention of being a woman and also a player of video games. But I do know that this is a man's sort of world, at least for the most part.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of stats out there too that talk about, that female gamers have like surpassed male gamers, or it's closer to 50-50. And this isn't a dig on that. It's just my personal experience though, like working in the store. I see probably 75% males over females. And at GameStop, when people were applying there, like I remember, when we talked about diversity in hiring. So like oftentimes my district manager, my regional manager would send out emails saying, "Look, you have to diversify your staff. So we want you to hire, minorities and females." I'm like, "Okay, well, I will if they're qualified." That was always the thing. If they're qualified, I'm going to do it. And unfortunately, living in northeastern Wisconsin, the majority, if not everybody who applies, is typically Caucasian. And I would say 85 to 95% of the applications I got were from men. So it's not necessarily that we weren't trying to hire women. It's just that we got 200 men applying and 5 women. And the 5 women were all in high school and could only work on weekends. Well, I needed people during the week. So, and I actually always had women. A good friend of mine, Robin, she worked with me for many years. She was an assistant manager and a third key for me for a long time. She was great. I hired the best people I could find. It didn't matter, what gender they were or what race they were. I hired the best people I could find. It's just around here, it's very true. We're not a diverse area up here. We're just not. In Milwaukee and Chicago, it's a lot more diverse areas.
Well, and again, going back to just the percentage of women in the video game industry, especially women in upper level management. I know we've talked about Amy Hennig, an unfortunate, situation that she no longer works at Naughty Dog, but was a very big influence. And I'm sure that there's maybe a handful of other women, but you don't hear about them. You don't hear about the women working on video games. They're
I think it's getting better, but you're right.
It's getting better.
But for the longest time, studios didn't even get recognition. Like EA would come out and say, "This is an EA game," and then finally certain studios would leave a mark, like BioWare. So now the studios started to become stars, and then eventually you start to get the people that are the heads of those studios start to become the stars too. So thankfully, individuals and especially female individuals are starting to get the due respect that they deserve for the hard work they've put in.
And that does make me happy, and I hope to see more women coming out into the video game industry in those upper level sort of management or directors positions.
And they're getting there. I think the head of 343 Studios, which does Halo now, I think I'm pretty sure that's a woman.
Yes.
And she's kicking butt there. Working on Halo. I mean, it's like the biggest franchise Microsoft has. So I mean, that's not messing around,
No, it's not
but yeah, again, the story started off as we wanted to talk about, hey, Mass Effect had some kind of laughably funny animations. They're kind of bad.
But then
watch a video, it's gonna make you laugh today. And then people as always take it too far. And now we've got people as sexually harassing people that worked on the game. I mean, it's so ridiculous to me. Like we have to be better than that. And I don't know. I can't say it's a young versus old thing. Because I'm not that old. But I can't say it's a young person's thing where all these young people just don't have manners and stuff. It's not like that. It's just there's a human flaw that lately it feels like a lot of people are emerging with, which is a lack of empathy for other people.
Yeah.
And a lack of ability to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And so, okay, this person and with her, if she was working on facial animation on this game over the last year, she's probably burned out right now, I would assume, because I
Mhm.
can't imagine she's taking a vacation.
Oh, probably not.
Especially in crunch time. I wouldn't be surprised if for the last 6 months she hasn't been working 60, 70, 80 hours a week for the last 6 months, getting this game ready to go.
Mhm.
And so, first of all, you lay off that, and then it's just a game, you know? It's not a big deal. It's just a game, and it's so frustrating to me that people take this stuff so seriously. Like, I love games. I make a living selling games, but it's still just a game. It's not like, and it's not like it's unplayable. Like, if you bought this game and you put it in your system and then it melted your PS4, and you were like, oh, no, I don't have the game or my PS4, and then EA won't give me my money back to fix my PS4, I'm out of this money, it's, again, doesn't say it's okay to sexually harass somebody, but it's okay to be mad.
Well,
It's not okay to be mad just because of something like this. It's so silly to me.
also something to keep in mind too, it's that it wasn't done to be personally insulting to people. People are reacting as though that they were personally
Right.
insulted because it wasn't what they expected it to be. And I'm sorry, it's just facial animations. It again, going back to that uncanny valley, if something's too realistic, I'm not going to want to play it because it's going to creep me out.
Well, and here's the crazy thing. The majority of people complaining haven't even played the game.
yes,
They're going off of a few YouTubers that played it and put a video up, and they're going off of these compilation videos, which we saw that were, again, very funny. I highly recommend watching them. They were great. It was really creepy and hilarious to me. But they're looking at stuff like that, and they're not, so they haven't even played it yet. In fact,
Right.
there's a good example. I don't know if he listens to the podcast. I think he might. He actually might be waiting for it to go up on iTunes before he actually starts downloading it because he's a Mac guy. But my friend Mike, so he was on Facebook. Not that Mike, different Mike.
Oh, thank you.
So he's on Facebook. Grace's husband. So Grace, who did
Oh yeah, yes.
Groth's N7 T-shirt.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes, I I knew who you're talking
yeah.
about when you said Grace.
Cool. Well, I was, the audience did. So I was,
Oh,
I was
okay.
throwing out the Groth
The
N7 T-shirt. The
liquid fire artifacts.
yeah. So, but the point of that was just that he had been seeing some of the videos, and he is a huge Mass Effect fan. I'd say more so
Right.
than I am.
And she is
And
too.
she is too. They've done a lot of cosplay.
Cosplay.
Mike does a lot of replica weapon creation, and
She-
they're really good.
She was that blue girl.
Yep.
Whoever that blue girl
Asari.
is.
She was an Asari. Yeah, it was really cool. And so he kind of blew up, and he was really mad about. I think it was yesterday. I saw his Facebook post how he was just ranting about it. And then today, someone apparently who he knows gave him he had about 3 hours left on his EA trial of the game, and he let him log into it, and he played it. And
Oh.
he already said this morning, he's like, hey, it's not nearly as bad as everyone's saying. Just
Aw.
want to throw it out there. So I'm happy that he's enjoying it and that he's not
Yeah.
mad. But it's one of those things where it's easy to get fired up too early and then realize that it's not that important. But I know what it's like to be passionate about something and want it to be really good. Like, I was passionate about Metal Gear and I wanted it to be really good, and I was disappointed when it was over.
Well,
But
it's kind of again, kind of going off it wasn't what you expected, or you had that first initial reaction to something. When I found out about what the game style was going to be for Zelda Breath of the Wild, I was a little, not miffed, but just a little salty about it, going, what are you talking about? There's this whole cooking aspect to it, and you have to forage. What the
yeah,
heck
you
is that
when you
about?
first read that
I was
stuff,
not
you
happy.
you were very negative towards me. You
I
were
was
like,
like,
it's not my Zelda.
I was, because it was
Yeah.
such a shift from the original gameplay that I'm used to, where it's not an open world sort of concept
Yep.
for the most part. But the more I kind of looked into it and the more I saw gameplay, the more excited I got about actually trying this out, because it was still characters that I recognized, but just a different way to approach it. And I
Mm.
think that this kind of opens the door for Nintendo to do more games like this, which is good. But yeah, when I first heard it, I was like, I don't know, this doesn't sound very good. I don't think I'm gonna like this. And then the more I looked into it, and
Yeah.
experienced it, the more I'm like, okay, no, this isn't so bad. So I'm glad that someone who has Mass Effect so near and dear to them wasn't kind of supported in that disappointment. Actually having an opportunity to play it and say, okay, you're seeing the highlights, you're seeing the worst of the worst sort of thing.
Well, and as you know, because you've seen our closet full of my N7 hoodies, I am
Yeah.
also a Mass Effect fan, and I am a very big Mass Effect fan, and I'm a very big fan in regards to having respect for the original trilogy, but I also had checked expectations for this game. I wasn't expecting it to be anywhere near as good as the first trilogy. In fact, I'm expecting it to not be very good in general. I just know that the company that made the original game isn't there anymore. It's a different heart, it's a different soul. So that's fine. But like again, tempered expectations. It's going like a little more realistic.
Well, and it's also our it's what's in vogue right now is doing games or redoing games or rebooting shows and all that kind of stuff. That stuff is so popular right now. And when somebody says, "Oh, this game is a trilogy," I don't expect to see another one come out. So I don't know where because I've never played it. I don't know where it kind of fits in the timeline. You can tell me later, but usually when somebody says, "Oh, it's a trilogy of games," I don't usually expect to see an additional one.
Yeah, well, and I always think it's weird when games do a trilogy and then close the loop at the end, because that's essentially what Mass Effect 3 did. It closed a loop, it finished a story arc and essentially was done. But it's not like it's a movie where you have to rehire actors and you didn't sign them on, and now if it's more popular, they're going to demand more money. Like, it just straight up, you just make another one. Like, it's different in the video game industry. So.
Well, that's very true, because as anybody who subscribes to Game Informer magazine would have seen, the most recent issue had an article about the DLC for Uncharted, and that article talked very briefly about how they were trying to figure out what would be the most logical next step for the Uncharted franchise, because they felt they couldn't do a lost Nathan Drake storyline, because even some of the stuff they never really touched on in the game were alluded to or talked about in different ways during the gameplay about, "Oh, you remember this thing?" Whatever. And they thought, okay, well, we can't really do a fast forward scene with some characters, because that wouldn't make sense. And then, okay, well, you can't do this character. There's so many different things that they could have done, and I'm glad that the newest Uncharted thing, I don't want to call it. They were very vague about how much gameplay is actually in it. They're like, "Oh, it's less than Uncharted 4, but more than."
Feels like an add-on, kind of like a separate expansion pack almost, but
yeah. So I'm glad that they did it that way, because, like you said, they closed the loop on that sort of the storyline, or they closed the loop on that plot.
Yeah.
And trying to revisit it causes a whole host of problems when you're talking about trying to maintain that storyline without really doing much.
Yeah. Well, so I'm done talking about that.
Okay.
It's so depressing talking about, well, just Mass Effect sucking in general, and then having to go to the horrible bottom of the internet and read what these horrible people have to say. So, as promised to our adoring fans worldwide, here's a feel-good story. This is actually kind of cool. We're hyping up more than it really is, but it's just I thought it was a neat story. I came across it on Kotaku.
So let me set this up.
Yeah.
So somebody on Reddit, his name is Tizzlefix. He was playing Zelda Breath of the Wild and actually beat it, so congratulations to him. And as he was watching the ending credits, he noticed something very interesting to him. So interesting, in fact, that he actually did some Googling and some research on his own to try and solve this mystery. And what he found was that in the credits, under wildlife programming, there was a very, very American-sounding name, Corey Bunnell, Corey Bunnell, let's just say. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Now, this is interesting for one reason, and that is because Nintendo, as a Japanese company, doesn't normally hire people who are not Japanese.
Right, and it wasn't like he's a localization expert
or a translator.
He was straight up just a programmer.
Wildlife programming.
A wildlife programmer.
I think one of two people. So there was one Japanese person, I'm assuming Japanese person, and then this Corey Bunnell. So this Reddit user Tizzlefix was like, okay, that's just really weird because how does this happen? And he did some Google searching of his name, and he found that around 2007 there was a forum that he had posted, Corey Bunnell had posted on. It was the Translators Cafe forum asking for advice on how to study more and eventually work in Japan. And there's like a screenshot of it, but essentially what it boils down to is that he had just graduated high school in 2007. He had spent 5 months in Japan as an exchange student, and he did go on a 3-week exchange to the same school on another occasion. And he loved being in Japan, and he wanted to learn Japanese and work at Nintendo.
That was his goal.
That
So
was...
He set a goal to learn Japanese and work at Nintendo.
And he says, I know this post is very general, but my dream is to live in Japan and work for Nintendo as a game designer. But it's been my dream since I first played Mario, and he needed to figure out how to achieve that goal. And he knew he needed to go to a game design school in Japan and get his Japanese to a level where he could speak and write professionally.
Right. Now think about this for a minute. So he's learning a second language
so
well that he can program in it. How many of us wish we could program in English?
I know.
And it's unbelievable. So he learned a second language. He programs in Japanese. I mean, it's not like he goes there and programs in English and then has to be like, hey guys, hope everyone else in this building can read this. No, he straight up programs in Japanese.
So according to they found out...
Which, now that I think of it, I'd have to ask Joe about that. Maybe I'll ask him.
Okay.
Because I'm sure that there's certain things, though, because a lot of Japanese use English.
Okay.
So it's possible that a lot of programming there is basic words, like if and then statements might still be if and then.
Sure. Go and...
Yeah, like some of that stuff might still be in
Tran.
English. So, not that it's still what he did was still easy or anything, but... So I may be giving him a little too much credit, but I still think it's very impressive, if nothing else, to just set a goal and to hit it.
Right. But 3 years after posting on that forum, so 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. So in 2010, he was admitted to Japan's Ritsumeikan University, where he studied programming.
Awesome.
Now, that's a Japanese school. That's, I think, the third best Japanese university in Japan.
Wow. For just programming or just...
I think in general, it's like in terms of prestige, at least from what I read when I learned about this. But he did an alumni video a few years ago that talked about the skills he learned at the school and how he was able to begin interning at a video game company and eventually go on to work there full time.
Which was Nintendo, which he probably didn't mention, but that's awesome.
No, he didn't. But he joined Nintendo in 2014, which was the same year that he graduated Ritsumeikan, which leads you to believe that he interned at Nintendo and then.
Most likely that school had like a relationship with Nintendo and they were interning their students. So like Nintendo would go there and say, hey, who's your hottest young talent? We want them to intern here and see how they do it. So he got the internship there after working his butt off in college and then got hired by Nintendo in Japan.
But what's really funny is before this kind of article dropped or before this Reddit user posted this, what people were kind of giggling about was that there was a game development team picture that was posted
from Breath of the Wild.
And in the back there's a tall guy in a pink shirt that's clearly Caucasian. And everybody's like, who's that white
guy? That's awesome.
So what's also great is that his brother, who we're assuming his brother is Justin Bunnell, also tweeted news of his brother's long journey, writing, "It's amazing that my brother Corey is doing exactly what he wanted to do." So well done. It's just, he didn't have like some uncle that worked at Nintendo. He didn't know anybody. He wanted to learn Japanese and he wanted to learn programming so that he could work at Nintendo and fulfill his dream of doing that. And that is amazing that he was able to do that.
So what I would say about that too, because I want to piggyback on that and just say, obviously this sounds really after school special, so sorry in advance. But everybody, seriously, like, it's never too late to do what you want to do. So like when I was 30 is when I, after 11 years, quit GameStop to essentially start over from scratch with Game Trade. And I obviously worked very hard, and I had a lot of luck too. But I worked very hard, and I got to see my dream come true. And it's never too late. Like, you can
Mhm.
absolutely still do what you want to do. And if you aren't happy, look into improving that. Look into making yourself better. You can do whatever you want. It's just, it depends on how much work you want to put in. And I truly do believe that. Like, I believe you can do whatever you want. But yeah, I mean, is it going to be like, say you want to go to school? Okay, well, you don't make a lot of money. You don't have a lot of free time. Okay, well, you do a 2-year degree in 4 years at NWTC, and you work your butt off, and you maybe get a programming thing. My younger brother just graduated a couple years ago, or last year, late last year. No, early last year. I don't know.
I
It
don't
doesn't
even
doesn't
remember.
matter. It
It
doesn't
was,
matter. Let's
it
say a
was a
couple
little
years
while.
ago. He went back to school. He became a programmer, and he's making a great living now being a programmer. And he had worked at GameStop for a while, and then worked at a bank for a while, and then just kind of didn't have a career. He was just working jobs, and he was able to do that. And I'm not saying that everything needs to have people go back to school, of course, too. And I'm not saying like riddle yourself with tons of student loan debt or anything. But it's what I'm trying to say is what you really want to do. There's a path to it. If you want to make video games, you can learn everything you need to learn right now for free.
Right.
You can go online, do tutorials, you can do whatever you can do it. It all depends on how much time you want to put into
Mhm.
it.
That's really, and we have a saying at my company, which is a saying a lot of places. I even have a giant button that I have stuck on my cubicle wall that says, "You gotta wanna."
I like
And
that.
if you wanna, you can do it. If you wanna learn how to play the piano, you gotta wanna learn how to play the piano. If you wanna learn how to knit or sew or crochet or do the tango or make make a dining room table, like Greg said, you can find a YouTube video for just about anything you want to do, but you gotta want to do it.
Well, and that's and to be specific too, like I'm not going to say that life's not going to throw you curveballs.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying it's going to be easy because it never is. And well, that's not true. Some people have it easy. Let's just be honest. Like
Well,
some
yes.
people get it really easy and some people have it harder. That's just life in general. And so you're going to have some conflict. You're going to have you're going to have people saying you can't do it. You're going to have things getting in the way that make you think that you can't do it. It's going to all be there. And if you are able, you'll be able to push through and you'll be able to. What was that one thing I told you? I heard something that really resonated with me a long time ago, and I've liked the quote ever since. And
Oh, let me guess what it is.
okay, go ahead.
Don't eat yellow snow.
No, that's a very good one too.
That's a good thing. Sorry,
that's a very good one.
I thought of one really, really good, but it's so not appropriate. But continue.
Well, what I was gonna say is I mentioned this to you. I think it was last weekend or 2 weekends ago, but it was something that really resonates with me, and it was the world doesn't hate you, it just doesn't care about you.
Oh.
So it's talking about like fate and stuff, right? And so it's talking about how, because some people are like, man, the world just hates me, the world's beating me up. The world doesn't hate you, it just doesn't care about you either.
Mhm.
It doesn't do anything to you. It's not anything. It's not a thing.
No.
So unfortunately, some people have bad luck and some people have better luck, or what appears to be luck, which is really just a series of events. And so it really, luck is an excuse. And so you just, sometimes bad things happen and you got to work through it. So I don't want to get all crazy about this stuff with you guys, but I just want to tell you, like, I know it's easy for me to say it because I did it. But I also attribute that to my weight loss too. Like, some of you may or may not know, I lost over 100 pounds over the course of a couple years ago. So like, you can do things that you sometimes feel at the time are impossible, and I've been able to do them, and I feel like other people can too. And I just want, like, give people a little bit of hope that, like, if you feel like you're stuck, it's never too late. Like, if you're 35 to 40 years old, you're 45 years old, and you want to go back to school, be a programmer to make games, you can do that.
Right.
You're not too old to do that. The only thing stopping you is you. Get all the excuses out of the way and then see if you can do it.
But we have forgotten our favorite movie that has a great quote, Back to the Future. And if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. Oh. I thought we stopped recording.
I thought we did too. Maybe we did for a bit. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Anyway, we always do this in one take, so you guys are getting the full unedited Dealy Bob here. But anyway,
sorry, that was the pause because I didn't see the what is that little thingy? The microphone.
Moving. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that.
The thing that registers where you are in the sound. That wasn't moving, so I'm just looking at it going, I don't think it's recording anymore, which is why I started to talk really
It might have.
slow.
We might have hit a weird glitch there. But anyway, it's fine. So you were saying, sorry, so your quote again was?
if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
Yeah.
Doc Brown.
All right. And he's a smart guy. I mean, he invented time travel.
I know.
So, and then lastly, I just want to do a little bit more Zelda impressions, and then we're going to get out of your hair here, guys. So,
Zelda impressions or impressions of Zelda?
my Zelda impressions. I'm Zelda.
I'm Zelda.
All joking aside, her voice acting is awful in that game.
Oh my god.
I'm not good enough to be a princess.
Oh, where's my sword?
that's pretty good. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So anyway, I still love the game. It is still frustrating at times though, and there's some really weird things that happen in that game, and they always seem to happen negatively to me. Like there's this really cool effect that if you have a flaming sword and you hit something that's wood, it'll start it on fire. So I was attacking a camp of enemies earlier today, and I went to swing and hit them through a log, and it set all of their weapons on fire. And then they picked them up and proceeded to beat the hell out of me with them.
That was pretty fantastic.
It was funny to you.
It was funny to me.
It's funny to me now. Wasn't funny to me when it happened. But here's what I really wanted to say. So the game is getting better and better. I've got almost all the towers now, so I've got almost the whole map uncovered. And this morning, I pulled the Master Sword. It was very cool. I like how they did it too. Again, no spoilers. Don't worry, everybody. I will not ruin anything for you. But it's excellent, and the game continues to impress me. I get frustrated and I get irritated, but I do fully believe that you have to have that frustration, and you have to have that the brick wall hitting, so that when you break through that wall or when you beat that boss, you get the sense of accomplishment. That's what I enjoy about Dark Souls. It has to put up a wall that you have to get over before you can be proud about getting over the wall.
No, that's very true. Something's too easy.
Exactly. You just walk through the game. What sense of accomplishment do you have? Now, some games we played through, like you played through Uncharted on easy, because who cares about being better at shooting a guy? You just want to know the story.
Right.
Like if I could watch Uncharted as a movie or even Metal Gear's movie, I would just watch it as a movie. I don't really care. But yeah, so that's my follow-up to Zelda. The Switch is still working, I guess. I don't know. I haven't had any problems with it. I don't really care much about it. I did buy Binding of Isaac for it, which we haven't played yet.
No.
But we're going to play that soon. But Zelda is just amazing. And again, if you guys have a Wii U, go buy it on the Wii U right now. If you don't have a Wii U and you have an extra $400, go buy a Switch and go buy Legend of Zelda. It really... Pro controller. Yeah, and the Pro Controller. Sorry, so you need $450.
Wait, how much is the Switch if that's $299?
The Switch is $300, the game's $60, so that's $360, and the controller, so $340. $440. $340? $340. No, $440. We're really bad at math.
Math is not my strong suit.
It's shocking how bad we are at
math. I had to take remedial algebra in college. That's how terrible I am at math.
Ooh, I was in AP.
They made you take like that assessment at the beginning. Like I had to sit in a room and take an aptitude test, and they kind of looked at it and they were like, "Yeah."
I did great in algebra, but once I got to calculus, I just lost it. I don't know if I just didn't care about math anymore, but I loved algebra. Everything up to algebra, I loved it. I loved math. I could see myself being like an accountant. I was like, "Oh, it's great." And then I got to calculus, and I was like, "Ugh, hate numbers." And symbols, and figuring out the circumference of a slice of bread.
Well, for me, it was more I didn't know how to apply things like trigonometry.
Sure.
And geometry. Like, nobody could tell me how I was going to practically use this in my everyday life. And so, therefore, I had no ability to really understand it. Because for me, I need to understand the practicality and understand how I'm going to use this. So that's why, like, everybody else hated word problems. I loved word problems because they gave me a context. I need context for things.
Yeah.
That's why I, not to toot my own horn, but that's why I read, and I have a high reading comprehension, and I love language arts and English and all of that.
Well, la-dee-da, you and your darn reading books.
Me and my learning.
You and your learning school books. So anyway, that's it, guys. That's the podcast for today. You got to hear a bunch of impressions from us today.
Yeah.
You got British whiny Zelda Princess Zelda. And then you got my southern hillbilly, uneducated
educated
redneck hillbilly. I don't know what you even call it. Southern, I don't know.
Well, you didn't do the 90-year-old Jen driving a car though.
No, that's some things I keep special for you and me. But maybe one day I'll do the 90-year-old southern Jen driving home from the grocery store. Thank you very much, you guys. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.